So back in 2010, me and my then boyfriend and now husband drove all the way from the UK to Ulaanbaatar in Mongolia as part of something called the Mongol Rally. And the rules of the rally were that you had to drive in a bit of a crap car that often had an engine size of 1 litre or under. And ideally you wouldn't have a map and you had to raise some money for charity. And the idea was that you'd have more fun going those 10,000 miles without the comforts that we were normally afforded in the West when we travel. And so we signed up for this. We were young, we were child-free, and we couldn't wait. And we decided to forego the crappy car bit and go all out for style. So we bought ourselves a 1987 Ford Escort bright red cabriolet soft top and decided to drive that all the way to Mongolia. Our friends and family thought we were bonkers, like absolutely mad, but it didn't matter because we knew we'd look good on the journey, and for us, we thought we couldn't fail. But that's all we did. At every point in this journey on the way to Ulaanbaatar, we failed at something every single day. And, it started with the start line at Goodwood. We got to drive a lap round the track at Goodwood, which was just iconic and really amazing. But we rocked up, like, woefully underprepared, and looked at the teams either side of us at the kind of start line, realising that we'd not done anything. They kind of prepared their cars so they were protected against the elements that would come. Some had roof racks. People had, raincoats and all-weather gear. We had fancy dress. And luckily, my mum had made us sandwiches to take with us on the first day as well. Like, we took every day as it came. We had a tent at least, and we hadn't booked anything in advance, and off we went through Europe. And our push through Europe was super fun. We camped and we partied, and we went through France, Germany, the Czech Republic, Hungary, then into Romania, and drove down something called the Transfiguration, which is this iconic road that you might have seen on like Top Gear or even like car ads, and looked down and just thought, oh, we've made it, like we're having so much fun. But despite all of this, we just had issues. Our car was overheating. We didn't speak any English to anyone in Romania for the 3 days that we were there. And the first border crossing that we hit between Romania and Moldova predicated what would come for every border crossing that we would experience after that, because we never had enough cash in the local currency that was needed to get through the borders. I don't think either of us had gone on an overland border crossing in our entire lives. And of course, we didn't realise the attention that we would attract, being in our bright 1987 Ford Escort Cabriolet, covered in rally stickers and quite often in fancy dress. And also, explaining how woefully unprepared we were. The car wasn't even in either of our names. It was in a family member's name. So every border official would query, where is said person? Why isn't said person here? So we would have to negotiate and bribe and argue and plead, and sometimes I cried and I had a panic attack, or a pretend panic attack, so that border officials would let us go through with our car, because when we hit the kind of Moldovan-Ukrainian border, the border official and us got into a deadlock for 8 hours where we refused to leave our car, but he insisted that we weren't getting into Ukraine with it and that the owner had to come. So, that kind of explained how unprepared we were, but we were still rock stars. We still looked really good. But we had started to plan and adapt. And the couple of days, the 2-3 days that we were in Ukraine, and the rock star thing kind of hit us there, because we were stopped by a local TV crew and filmed. We have no idea what was said or anything like that. But we started to think, actually, losing the car is a really big deal. So we adapted and got better at discussing our situation with border officials. And so we went from Ukraine into Russia, and then from Russia all the way through Kazakhstan, where you don't mention Borat, by the way. And then Kazakhstan into Russia again and into Mongolia. And we thought by the time we got to Mongolia, we were pretty expert at getting through borders. But again, we were failing every day because our poor car was suffering immensely. During the trip through Kazakhstan, the roads are really awful. Our exhaust fell off. Bits of car would just fly off the car and kind of land on the road behind us. And quite often, my poor boyfriend, at the time now husband, was seen underneath the car fixing it and swearing. We were leaking fuel, our exhaust had fallen off, and quite amusingly, our engine was rattling so bad one time when we took it to a garage and kind of did the sign language charades thing with the garage owner in Russia. The second time, we realised that our entire engine was being held in by one bolt that had almost shaken out. When we got into Mongolia, we thought things were going okay-ish until the first night we were there, and the car alarm went off all night, and the next morning we woke to see that the door handles had been ripped off, and we couldn't actually get into our car. And a local just came out of nowhere with a wire, showed us how to break into our car, and then gave us the wire, and that was our car key for the rest of the trip. But sadly, a couple of days later, our car broke down and it never quite made it again. We got it fixed eventually, thanks to the friendliness of teams from the Mongol Rally that would stop and help us, thanks to 2 amazing truck drivers who picked us up and towed us rather terrifyingly for a day and a night to a place where they needed to drop off the sheep that they had in the back of their truck. And we got to stay the night with a family and drink shots of vodka and have lots of fun. But that journey was terrifying because we were shook to our bones. But we got the car fixed the next day and kind of had a glory day or two where we got to drive through rivers and the car would make it, and kind of pretend that we were going to make it across the finishing line in Ulaanbaatar, probably tomorrow or the day after. But actually we broke down again because the back axle had actually snapped in 2 and had started to spark. And what with our leaky fuel engine, we thought this is it. So we went to the next town to get a truck to come back and pick our car up and take it to a drop-off point. But when we got back to the car, it had gone. And so we managed through charades and sign language to convince the truck driver our car was here. And so he took us to a local town nearby and spoke to the police, who were able to ring up a fixer who spoke English. And we found our car in a yard in this town, and when we got there, I cried because they'd taken everything, which is the Mongolian way, by the way. Even the Ford badge had been taken. The gear stick knob had gone. We took our poor car back to the next town and arranged with our fixer to get a taxi to the finishing line. We were only 6 hours away from Ulaanbaatar, and we couldn't finish with our car. And you'd think, when we got there, that we would be sad, but we woke up the next morning and we were walking on air. We were so happy that we had made it, you see, because we had finished no matter what. Other teams had looked after us, and that day we had an amazing dinner and we charmed everyone with our optimism and our kind of jubilance. And we sat and discussed of all the things that had happened. If we'd known about them in advance, would we have done the Mongol Rally? Absolutely not. There were some really dangerous situations. There were some really terrifying situations. And of course, we were so lucky to have not got into any road traffic accidents. Other teams had. We threw ourselves into this head first. Act first, deal later. And this has served us really well in our lives for the past decade. We got back to the UK. I threw myself into a job that I was woefully unqualified for. And within 18 months, I found myself as a board member at a digital marketing agency at age 31. I took on clients and projects I've always known very little about, but trusting that I would find out what I needed to know along the journey. And that actually led to both me and my husband starting our own businesses. And last year, I finally, after 39 years, went out on my own and became self-employed, not knowing what I wanted to do, but knowing I didn't want to work for anyone anymore, and not having any money, really, to back me up. But here I am, a year later, and that Mongol Rally mantra of act first, think later, has served me really well. So I put to all of you guys here this evening, what's your drive to Ulaanbaatar that you've been overthinking? What have you been putting off because you've been thinking about it too much? Maybe don't think and just do. And you can find your life's change very much like me and Joshua. There's not enough time to talk about all the stories, so if you want to find out or see some pictures of the Mongol Rally, come and chat to us afterwards. Thank you, guys.